All right, today we are diving into a dietary plan that, honestly, could be the key to unlocking digestive comfort for so many people. It's called the low FODMAP diet. Think of it as a tool, a process, and for a lot of folks, a total revelation.
So let me ask you this. Have you ever felt just frustrated by constant bloating or gas or that nagging abdominal pain and you just can't figure out why? Well, what if the very foods we're told are good for us, certain fruits, vegetables, and grains, are actually the secret source of the problem?
For so many people, chronic digestive issues can feel like this frustrating, unsolvable mystery, right? You're eating healthy, you feel like you're doing everything right, but the discomfort just sticks around. The good news is, it's usually not a mystery without clues. The first step is just learning how to pinpoint the specific food triggers that are causing all this trouble.
And listen, if this sounds like you are so not alone. A huge number of people live with these exact symptoms, and a lot of the time it's part of a condition called irritable bowel syndrome, or IBS. And we're not talking about a minor inconvenience here. This can seriously impact your quality of life.
Okay, so if we're treating this like a mystery, it's time to meet our prime suspects. There are a specific group of carbohydrates that often hide in plain sight, and they go by a single name, FODMAPs.
Okay, that is a mouthful, I know. But FODMAP is just an acronym. It stands for Fermentable Oligosaccharides, Disaccharides, Monosaccharides, and Polyols. Put simply, these are all just different types of short-chain carbs that, for some people, are really tough to digest. So let's break down what each part of that crazy name actually means. First up, F is for fermentable. All this means is that when these carbs get down into your gut, the bacteria that live there see them as an all-you-can-eat buffet. This feeding process is called fermentation and, well, it produces gas as a byproduct.
Next, O stands for oligosaccharides. You'll find these in foods you probably eat all the time, like wheat, onions, garlic, and beans. And here's something really interesting. A sensitivity to these oligosaccharides might actually explain some cases of non-celiac gluten sensitivity. It might not be the gluten at all, but these specific carbs in the wheat that are causing the issue.
Up next, D is for disaccharides. The main one here is lactose, which is the sugar in milk and dairy products. This is probably the one you're most familiar with. Yep, it's the culprit behind lactose intolerance.
Then we have M for monosaccharides. The key player here is fructose. Now, hold on, this doesn't mean you should avoid all fruit. The problem is when a food has excess fructose compared to glucose. That imbalance is what can cause trouble, and you'll find it in things like apples, pears, and watermelon. And finally, P stands for polyols. These are sugar alcohols. You'll see them in artificial sweeteners. Think sugar-free gum and candy, but they also show up naturally in some foods like mushrooms and avocados. So here's the crucial part. Why do these things actually cause problems? It's really a two-part punch. First, they're not absorbed well, so they draw extra water into your intestine. Then, they keep moving down the line to your large intestine, where your gut bacteria have a feast. For people with sensitive guts, that combination of extra water and extra gas is the perfect storm for bloating, pain, and all those other lovely IBS symptoms. This brings up a really important question. After hearing that whole list of suspects, it's easy to start thinking that these foods are just plain bad and that everyone should avoid them.
But the answer is a hard no, not at all. For most of us, FODMAPs are totally harmless. In fact, some of them, like the oligosaccharides, are actually prebiotics. They feed our good gut bacteria. The problem isn't the food itself, it's the specific reaction that happens in people who just have really sensitive digestive systems.
So, how do you figure out if these foods are a problem for you? Well, that's where the plan comes in. And it's so important to get this right. The low FODMAP diet is not a forever diet. It's a structured, three-phase investigation designed to help you find your personal triggers. Here are the three phases. First up is elimination. This lasts about 2 to 6 weeks. You basically cut out all high FODMAP foods to let your system calm down and see if your symptoms get better. Then you move to phase 2, reintroduction. Over about 8 weeks, you carefully, systematically bring back each FODMAP group one by one to see what you can handle. And that leads to the final phase, personalization. This is the whole goal, a long-term, sustainable diet where you only have to limit your specific trigger foods. Now, following this process correctly is absolutely critical if you want to get clear results. So let's talk about the rules of the road, how to really set yourself up for success.
Okay, first things first, and this is non-negotiable. Please do not do this alone.
Talk to a registered dietitian or a gastroenterologist who can guide you. After that, you've got to plan ahead, clear out your kitchen of all the high FODMAP stuff, and have some simple go-to meals ready to go. You have to commit.
And that brings me to maybe the single most important rule of this whole thing. During that initial elimination phase, you have to be strict. Seriously, think of it like a science experiment. If you cheat, even a little bit, you're contaminating your results, and you'll never know if the diet is actually working. As the saying goes, the whole experiment collapses if you cheat.
And there's a really good reason for all that strictness. The entire point of this process is to get you to a place of freedom and variety with your food, not to trap you in some long-term restrictive diet. It's about building your own personalized food map.
And see, this isn't about deprivation at all. It's just about making smart swaps. So instead of apples or pears, you can have grapes or strawberries. Instead of onions and garlic, you can use things like carrots and bell peppers to build flavor. It's all about finding what works for your body.
And the best part? We know it works. Clinical studies have shown that somewhere between 50 and 76% of people with IBS feel a significant improvement in their symptoms when they follow this plan. I mean, for anyone who's been struggling for years, those are some incredibly hopeful numbers.
So at the end of the day, this isn't just a diet, is it? It's a learning process. It's an experiment where you are both the scientist and the subject. The goal isn't to take food away forever, but to finally truly understand your own body on a much deeper level. So the real question isn't what you have to give up, but what amazing new freedom and knowledge could you possibly gain?